Mickey wished he hadn't lost the scroll in the time jump, that spinning, twirling vortex which had dead-ended into darkness, into this so-called new world run by the money robots. God knows which time zone it had landed itself into. Was it the past? The future? Which? After the portal had closed up, Mickey was told he traveled into a renamed continent of the Earth and arrived 7 years later into the future. To him, it seemed like he'd been relocated 20 or even 30 years further ahead. But it was only 7 years. How could the world change so quickly in just 7 years, he wondered. Anne's apartment on the 30th floor barely had 600 square feet of living space, and that was for the three of them to share. Anne, his daughter, Sheila, and him. His daughter, Sheila, yes. One bedroom, one bath, a small kitchen, and a tiny living room with a view. He'd never forget when he'd first seen his daughter, Sheila. His daughter. How gold and blonde her hair was, how sweet her tiny fingers, when he'd first seen them reaching out into the air in joy, the first hug around his legs, a flush of wavering innocence in her eyes, as the girl had stepped out of the bedroom. The tip of her 6-year-old head had barely reached his kneecaps. His hips. My God, Mickey said, she's just so beautiful. Of course she is, Anne said. Doesn't she look just like you? Maybe a little bit, though I see most of you in her eyes, in her face, in her body. She's got you. Your mannerisms too. Especially the way she reaches out to me with those tiny fingers. How they're so much like yours, long and thin. She's got your ocean blue eyes and lips, and she's got your smile. Sheila did look quite a bit like himself, maybe even more so than Anne, he thought. He recognized his long forehead and nose on the young girl. His tall stature and mid-frame, too. He loved his little girl and she loved him. The two of them instantly connected, even though Sheila said very little to him during the first few weeks. Maybe she's shy, he thought. Still a little uncomfortable. Probably doesn't understand why I was gone for so long and why I'm here now. It didn't take long for him to find out. He was still getting used to adjusting to becoming a father. It was the last thing he'd expected. His mind began to work in a new way upon the realization. For weeks, Mickey had also noticed how much Anne had changed being a mother. Not only did Anne look 7 years older, but she was work-driven now, working as an assistant in a biotech facility within a government-sponsored university. It was her job, a job her father had gotten her before he died 3 years ago from a heart attack. Anne was motherly now, always clinging to her daughter Sheila and caring after her. She was so clingly to Sheila that she wouldn't even let herself be apart from the young girl on her spare moments of free time. Anne couldn't take her eyes off her daughter while they were all in the room together, and Mickey had noticed. God forbid when Sheila ever got upset, Mickey thought, because Anne always caved into the girl's demands by giving the girl everything that she wanted. Mickey had wanted that to stop, but Anne would never hear any of it. Stop worrying, won't you, Mick? I'm not gonna spoil our little girl. Sheila deserves what she wants. Everyone does. Well, there was little he could do to stop her. Her personality had grown much stronger than when he'd last seen her on the hill outside of the mine 7 years ago. Anne was in full control of their daughter in all ways. As far as Sheila's schooling went, the process of education occurred only at home or the workplace. There weren't any more schools to attend in person, or any colleges either. According to Anne, getting an education in a citizen-sponsored public building was believed to be a waste of natural resources, a waste of time, a waste of money for the world economy. Education was exclusively provided through special applications and software set up on computers and databases and cloud systems, in the workplace or at home. That's where everybody did their study, their education. Every citizen agreed to this radical change, that requiring children to attend schools in person was a waste of money. Money is everything, as you know, and Mick and everyone's happy when they get to save a little more doing it this way. Not to mention that it saves us all a lot of time as parents from having to drive back and forth like our old ancestors did. What a waste of time and a waste of money. That's what she said. For weeks, Mickey couldn't believe how much the education process had changed. Education was now virtual-based and run through an artificial intelligence program, a global technology system called iNet. I.net it was called. Teachers had been replaced by avatars. Students were graded according to iknow.net, another form of artificial intelligence said to be globally superior, and all-knowing of everything, all-knowing of all history, science, mathematics, languages, philosophy, and other academic fields of study. iknow.net was said to have an IQ of over 300, that is growing 3% a year. Every known book to man was stored within its intelligence, and every bit of knowledge as well. All data was plugged into i.net and iknow.net, and every political and legal decision was based upon the data. Across the globe, every member of the Senate and Congress in democracies were replaced by robotic avatar AI programs. A singular central intelligence now globally governs citizens living on every continent. The initiation of this new form of AI governance had promised to prevent previously poor emotional decision-making within every nation's leadership. The removal of human decision-making was said to be essential to prevent people from repeating the mistakes of the past. It was said that history must not be able to repeat itself again. Thus, emotional human impulses had to be replaced by emotionless, logistical thought processes within the artificial intelligence leadership programs. Only one leader oversaw the logistics artificial intelligence government, and he was called the King. No one was allowed to call him by any first or last name until discard day came. Discard day, yes. Discard day. Discard day. It was said to be a day of world faith that was coming in about 6 months' time. Discard day. The day would mark a new era, a time of which every citizen was required to participate in the honoring of the new world king. Discard day. Mickey had heard very little about it except that the day was coming for the discard. Mickey wasn't sure if he could adjust to this new world. He wasn't sure if he could learn to adapt. After landing himself 7 years into the future, he didn't recognize the city he lived in, and he didn't recognize his new country either. All he knew was that every land across the globe had fallen under one new form of governance, strictly run by artificial intelligence programs, thought processes, and that this entire new world was called We Are One Utopia. We are one utopia. We are one. He hated not being able to escape the omniscient eyes of the artificial intelligence or its surveillance. Everything in the apartment was controlled through I.net, even the living room blinds, the toilet systems, the refrigeration, the condition of the air. One of the first things Anne had him do was register Mickey within their previous nation state. He needed to set up his national profile and be activated in I.net. After all, he had come through that time portal, and he was unregistered. He had to be activated with his national profile in I.net. Of course, they had to know Mickey was alive again. According to Anne, he'd been dead for 6 years. 6 years lost in time. A missing persons case, said to have died in the great terrorist earthquake before the bigger one afterwards. The San Andreas Revenge earthquake. His registration process had gone smoothly. The department that gave her approval to go back and fetch him from the time stream clarified all of his declarations. He couldn't believe how easy it was to be alive again, let alone be digitally brought back from the dead. The next thing Anne did was walk him through the process of getting a digital wallet. This gave him access to the God.net, Good Overlord database system. It was an exchange system to be able to buy and sell in the economy. Only their new money could be used in economic transactions. Every transaction was purely digital since possession of paper currency was forbidden, and the use of precious metals to barter were forbidden as well. Any such events took place only on the black markets, and if you were caught, it was punishable by death. Mickey had been told that the process of buying and selling goods and services would change soon, and that moving from an RFID chip embedded in his digital water wristband to an implant along his skin would come. The thought had terrified him, especially after he remembered what the scroll had said about getting chipped, and what that thing had warned him about just outside of the Zoo Cafe in Los Angeles when it had possessed Anne. That thing, yes. That thing that had possessed Anne, that had taken her over and made her begin to change. He remembered that in the past, before he was sent into the future to this time portal 7 years later now. Don't get chipped, yes. Whatever you do, don't get chipped. That's what he recalled and remembered, the warnings. The wristband also gave him access to his social media accounts, where there was only one left account now, one left, as well as world and local news and public transportation access. That's what he would be able to access with it as well. Most important, the wristband allowed him to activate devices in the household, the restroom, yes, the toilet systems, the showers, the water faucets, the video news. He'd also be able to have access to all the public places with it. Without it, very difficult to get around, to use things. The utility was restricted. He'd been warned that if he broke any laws, his digital identity wristband would instantly be deactivated. He'd be shut off from society, shut off from the world, an outcast. Less than human is what he would become, which meant that he couldn't use anything controlled through his national account system. He couldn't conduct any travel or any economic purchases again, and that meant that he wouldn't be able to enter Anne's apartment, access the refrigerator, use the utensils he needed to eat with, or drink any water from the faucet. He wouldn't even be able to use the bathroom anywhere in society again. Everything, yes, it was controlled by I.net, all because everything you did was through access and the rights to do something. The rights, digital rights, to do things, to do anything in society. You had to have digital rights. Everything was stored in God.net and closely monitored by I.net, which monitored and supervised access to you.net, which was your identity as we.net in society, all of us, yes, we. The you was we now. It was said that upside down to such that the upside to such punishment was that the final elimination of lying and cheating and murder was now within society's reach through God.net, through the use of God.net, that is, and I.net and all of the technology. Yes, the elimination of lying, cheating, and murder and violence in general was now within society's reach to be entirely eliminated and entirely restricted. If Mickey broke any laws, he'd also be shut off from finding any work, which meant he could not work again either. But finding a job had been tough for him because he wasn't sponsored by anyone else outside of his immediate family. Family or friends do not count as sponsorship. To be sponsored meant that one had to have a proven track record of being social in society, a social ranking that was acceptable and met all of the requirements that were determined in the governance directed by God.net and the King. One had to have proven that they could meet strangers and build a sustainable rapport with them. Mickey didn't know anyone and didn't have any friends, yet he was still considered unhireable until he did. Mickey felt trapped and betrayed by this technology he supported in the previous time period before the time travel that he reached in now. Yes, he felt betrayed by this technology that he loved and supported and embraced and thought would be a very utopian form of existence. I guess it depends on how it's used. That's what he was thinking. He was disillusioned now. The money robots had them all locked down now. After invading everyone's money, they moved on to the next phase, social and behavioral control. That's what Mickey had realized. Weeks ago, Anne had programmed his voice into the registry so that he could activate on a guest pass all of the household devices. Everything was voice activated, everything from the toaster, the oven, refrigerator, all the way down to the locks on the doors and the faucets and the shower curtain, the cabinet knobs, and even the toilet seat being able to lift, and the toilet itself being able to flush. Whenever Mickey's mind raced like it was doing just now, he loved staring out the living room window to break up his disturbing thoughts. The views always guaranteed a good view of a bad place, a bad world, a world gone wrong, he thought. Open the blinds, he said, as he glanced out into the city. Open the blinds and activate the window view again. And so the noise hit the air and the blinds were lifted and removed, and Mickey glanced out to the city outside. Nothing was green. Everything was as brown as sand. Not a cloud was up in the sky. There never were any clouds anymore. No more clouds. No more projections of rain either. It hadn't rained for over a year or more in this region. The news regency had reported that as well. The permanent change in global weather was blamed on pollution. Those were the reports that Mickey had glossed over so many times from the iknow.net database, and it was all provided by God.net. He took a deep breath and glanced out again. Realized so many things. In place of clear blue skies and sunny days, Mickey saw a never-ending layer of haze covering the entire city above the towering buildings. The haze never seemed to retreat. It was sallow, tinted yellow, brown perhaps, with a mixture of orange sallow. Sallow as sallow the skin of a failing man with a failing liver. That was the color of the haze that never seemed to retreat from between the buildings, and the temperatures were always hot, even during the evenings. Hardly a day ever passed when the temperatures dipped below 120 degrees. When he watched the crowds clutter the sidewalks just then, he saw what they were wearing. Special ice packs to keep cool. People wore plastic clothes of ice around their necks, and across their foreheads were little tiny inserts for the ice, with bands that wrapped around and held tight the clasp of cool air in minuscule form against the skin, trapped for just a second. The ice packs were thin, but yet very efficient, quite efficient. Whenever Mickey went out, he was always keen on wearing one. Mickey watched as countless numbers of citizens stepped up to the curbs and boarded the vehicles driven without drivers. The strangest devices were mounted on car rooftops. They kept spinning and turning, as if to watch. They did watch. He was told there were cameras which were plugged into the BIII.net for navigation and for observance, and it all helped with the governance of God.net and iknow.net. Mickey saw them everywhere he looked, amongst driverless cars and vehicles and buses which dominated the flow of traffic in the city's landscape. The world had changed, yes, since he'd gone through that time portal. No one had to pay for goods and services with cash anymore. Paper money had been banned post the panics kicked off by the invasions. The invasion of money. The invasion of change. The digital identity wristband took care of all the money exchanges, all of the economics, the money robots. Their plan was final. World money was called the money exchange, a new international currency, a digital one that dominated global finance. Mickey had learned all about the new money from man the past few weeks, how it was supposed to prevent any further currency crises and eliminate debt dysfunctions across borders. Currency carry trades gone bust. Social harmony will be restored, Anne had said. It's a great idea. World money. Mickey wasn't so sure, not with all of the control and loss of freedom that he feared might be the case now. Yes, Mickey wasn't so sure. Close the blinds, Mickey said. Deactivate the window view. And so the blinds were slowly closed, and once again the view removed, and Mickey closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He felt a lot of negative thoughts and fear. He felt trapped. Everything felt like it was full of dread. The next moment, he feared. He wished the world would turn back, that it would change again, change back to the way it used to be. It was never perfect, but seemed to be better the way it was before. And a better world in any kind of way is what Mickey thought would be a better day. In the least, for a man, in the least, he wanted the world to change back to the way it used to be. He took another deep breath. He wanted it to change back.